Okay, this lesson centers on Genesis 1:2 and an example of how the narrative can be influenced and the conversation can become something much different than that which is scripted. So as the Cornet project class, this is a big lesson early in the text. So Genesis 1:2, and it's really good. This one's very good for our class, and what we do here is an example of demonstrating how much or how little there is from which so much can become. So Genesis 1:2, then first in one of our lessons we noticed was, and then of course the italicized form. Not that I would know how to write that, but anyway, so we had a standard print, standard font, and an italicized font. This was a translation from the Hebrew word H1961, and that's Hayah. Yeah. Anyway, just you can just study in the Hebrew class. But anyway, Hayah. And so what happens is we really have two choices, and they're not what we might think. Some say one of the choices, choice one here, is be or become. And you can read about that even in Walty and O'Connor's Introduction to Hebrew Syntax, Biblical Hebrew Syntax, but that's not the case for us. Before we assume that's the first choice, we know that that's probably not. What we have here is the presence of it, and in inflected form, it appears as ha, yeah, tha, and that's a cal, meaning simple action, cal perfect, third feminine singular. So the real question is the term. So is Hayah, yeah, so Hayah is, it's there. Now this may seem simple, but look at what it took to shift the conversation to be or become rather than is that term there or not. Because as I will show you that in the location in English, for example, when you read the English text, the King James Version, you have both occurrences of this. Both occurrences. So as I said, if you want to use the King James Bible, which I teach classes in how to use KJV, which seems to be more problematic than KJVO, my USE KJV seems to be, can be very upsetting to people who just don't want to use it, but it has information in it. The translators placed honest indicators there. So the question is as simple as, well, can H, for those of you that don't read the text, that is the Hebrew, does H1961 equal nothing? And it's very elusive. It's hard to communicate this because it's so elusive. We're so charged and primed that you might not be able to hear the fact that it's there. That word's there, so it scripts us. And again, as Landmark Missionary Baptist Church, a lot of people say they have their church is scriptural, which I really don't know. Judaism is scriptural, but a good question would be: are you scripted? Are you scripted? Now that's a big question, because when you're scripted by the text and you become a USE KJV, then even this has to speak to you. You would have to notice that if you're a USE KJV. Now, if you're just let's say what I call KJVO, it doesn't mean you would notice that at all. It doesn't mean you would stop, and it just means that the translation that you don't USE happens to be KJV. But to USE KJV, then you would be scripted by it, just as when we use the biblical Hebrew and look up these words. So the real question is, who invented the be or become dilemma? It's really not in the Bible, and it may appear in some books where people wrote that. But so when we're given a false choice, and that's what that is, you should just ask yourself, first of all, if you could do the USE KJV. In that you'll notice was and was, standard font, italics. And then second, you'll notice H1961. When you look that up, let's say you use a Hayah's Keyword Study Bible, or you go online to blueletterbible.org. English readers can use that. It's very user friendly. And then you can notice, and then you'll notice that the question's not be or become. That's not even in the text. That question is eisegetical, meaning it was imported. It was placed as early as Genesis. Think about that. You can back up to Genesis 1:1 and notice things are imported there, controversies that don't exist in the text. But then you'll notice that, well, so the question, all we have is a language-based scripted fellowship, and in this Cornet project class, it's certainly good for you to find the Bible useful. So is H1961 even there? And if it is, why is it there? Well, if it's not there to script us, then it wouldn't be part of the scriptures which script us. Now that's quite humiliating, but the good news for us, it places us all on level ground. So when we have people adamantly affirm that which they do not know or understand, then it's probably because there's no text for it. So I remember the first time I saw this, it was in Walty and O'Connor, Introduction to Hebrew Syntax, which is certainly, I don't know, I didn't check their source to see where they located that to then import it into their book, and it certainly doesn't mean that's not a good resource for what it's good for. It's just for us who are just scripted by the text. And that, now this is a church. Our class is not the church, but I'm saying when you teach in the ecclesia, that's the highest order of academia. That's the highest order of Bible usage. So the respect of the Bible words are unsurpassed in one of the Lord's New Testament communities. That is a New Covenant body. So if I were, let's say, something stepped down to the left, let's say to a university level, well, sure, we might play be or become, let's say, a subset in a university, a college, let's say a college of philosophy. Well, sure, you can wax eloquent all you want. Or then go to the other side, let's go to Sunday school, where you might have people come in who've done research or who really want to talk this out. Well, that's fine, but that won't happen in the pulpit. And then let's say if you're in a seminary, seminaries might move back and forth from be or become, back and forth between some forms of Calvinism, other forms of Arminianism. We were in classes where we studied all types of confessions throughout history, and yet with the languages and the tools we have and becoming trained, skilled practitioners of hermeneutics, we didn't need those in the ecclesia. Confessions are more pragmatic ways of demarcating and distinguishing identities that people assume, but really this was about the highest order of use of the Bible. The USE KJV, we aren't KJVO, we're USE KJV, we're scripted. So this is a really good lesson, because you think, my, who introduced such a false dichotomy so early? Well, that's what you can do if you stop and say, well, the Bible, the English text has a distinction, and the Hebrew has the use, and there has to be a use for this. God had to have a reason for placing that there, and it wasn't to invent this. It wasn't to invent, and certainly we have no interest in the Lord's church to equate and say, well, that word's just there, but it's not, holds no significance. Well, then they would both have been in italics. So that was it. It's a big lesson. It's a big deal. It's a small thing, but it's a huge lesson. And if you use any Hebrew at all, I was showing my friend Dr. Eddie Johnson the book of Genesis, this single copy, one book, just Genesis. But when I admired it, I was much younger and noticed one in the library of the Missionary Baptist Seminary in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I really admired it. Now I have to hold it differently, and so I'll get out my magnifying glass and enjoy that. But I do enjoy the fact that we have our computers now, all this can be checked out, and the question would be, is scripted or not? So that's the lesson from Genesis 1:2, scripted by the text or distracted by the false dichotomy. And you remember the narrative of men, when people seek to control the narrative, that's in all of us. We all would like to be the center of somebody's universe, but when you get over that and you deny yourself and begin following Christ, you find that supporting his text is what he called us to do, not use the text. Actually, and I'll end on this, but I was looking for another hard copy of the London Baptist Confession, the Second London Baptist Confession, 1689, because I've given several of those away. Taught a class on them, showing the things that they were trying to address in the confession, showing the fallible elements that I could notice. And so I went to look for one. I went online and it said something about a commentary or commentary on the Second London Baptist Confession with proof text, which they really did write that in there. So the Bible is not a source of proof text. Again, in illustration, the Bible is not used to support us, for example. We're called to support it. The word faith means support, so we're here to support it. So the Bible, in very literal reality, supports nothing. None of our constructs. It's not a proof text for anything. We're here to prove it, support it, and hold it up. So Hayah is a good word. God knew better. He put it there. It has a reason for being there, which is not no thing. It has something, holds implication. And it's a good lesson. So here at Hayah in the lexical form, inflected form, and I was winging it today, but I have, that has to be the number because I've used it so many times. So anyway, so you have a blessed day and enjoy this lesson. Very succinct, but there's a lot going on, and I just wanted to show how something can start so early in the Bible. Another conversation can be eisegetically imported into the text, and you can be over here bantering, be or become, and two camps can form before anyone even pushes pause, takes a time out and says, hey, just a minute, we're scripted, let's go back to our USE KJV, see if our translators helped us out, and let's go to our original, look those meanings up, and then all this will come to light, so that it's really no more of a problem. Be or become is not a problem that one believer has the prerogative to assign to another and dump it over to another, which we don't do that in one of the Lord's New Testament churches. Anything the Bible says is all of our responsibility, and mine especially as the pastor, and the other three pastors that work here with me is here to minister to the church, not to exasperate them or to set them one against the other. So you have a blessed day. Enjoy this lesson.